The following thoughts, opinions, stories, and expressions are meant for those who will appreciate them. If you don't, we hope you keep an open soul to encounter another here on 34 Questions. Peace. In 3, 2, 1. What's going on, folks? Welcome to 34 Questions. I'm your host, 34, and tonight I have a very special guest. Joe Khoury is in the building. How you doing tonight, Joe?
I'm doing good, man. I appreciate that. Thanks for being here yourself, It's cool, man. I'm doing great. Thanks for asking.
For sure.
How's everything on your end?
It's cool, man. It's a Tuesday. I usually have 30 minutes before from when I get off my day job to doing these podcasts. So
Nice.
it's
You
a
got
good
routine then. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, I try. Routines are hard to keep, but as much as possible, we try, right? So today, I am on my routine.
That's all you can be doing, bro. Exactly. Optimizing, we'll get into that too, I think it's important, there's certain routines and with certain elements of life, whether it's, like work oriented or like, just like physically or like mentally or nutritionally,
Yeah.
But yeah, it's nice to know you found that flow, that's something a lot of us look for and pretty cool to have. So yeah, congrats.
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, we can definitely get into that too. It took me a long ass time to figure it out. And it's always a battle. Yeah. And thank you for joining me so late. I know you out there on the East Coast.
No worries.
But yeah.
Yeah, I can. It's all good.
For sure.
It's a cozy time of night.
I like that, cozy. For the folks out there who are unfamiliar with the flow of the show, we do some intro questions, some warm-up questions just to set the tone. After that, we'll jump into a couple icebreakers. After the icebreakers, we'll turn to the Wheel of Fate, where we'll spin the wheel, and whichever number it lands on, that's where the conversation will go. And then after all that, we'll finish it off with some closeout questions. Sound good to you, Joe?
Yeah, awesome.
All right. Very first question for you, man, is how have you been? You've been doing great. You've been doing well. How you been lately?
I am doing nice. I'm doing okay. It's overall, yes, a positive, I'd say.
Got you.
It's an interesting time of life, I'd say. I'm flipping a chapter, So, sometimes, you move, whether it's like a different apartment or you change jobs or like you take on a new hobby or so.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm flipping a chapter of myself, and it's a lot of self-discovery, a lot of exploration, trying to intuitive problem solve to the next step and everything. But it's working out. I'm thankful for how things are going, and I've taken some risks with myself, and those have been proven to be paying off so far. So that's a new thing for me. So I'm happy about it.
For sure.
I'm doing well. Thank you.
I'm glad to hear you're doing well. If you don't mind, I will ask you, because you mentioned the risks that you've taken and are paying off. Is there one that you can speak on? Yeah.
So like this is this chapter I'm flipping myself. It's professionally. So I work in the marketing field line of work. It's a very general. It's a huge spectrum of what marketing means. I'm not going to get too specific.
For sure.
But I've been honing certain elements of marketing, ones that I found to be where my strengths are. And I've gone to the point where I've trusted myself in terms of like executional ability to like think the right way creatively as well, to do it on like my own. So I've like went freelance recently to do certain marketing verticals.
Okay.
And it's been like, well, you make that shift and you can't guarantee that you'll have like clients to keep the money coming in, or you can't guarantee that like you'll have like full understanding for the business development end of things. Because I have to worry about like legal stuff of like getting a potential freelance lawyer or like like a financial person to help kind of make the most out of the tax situation and everything. So anyway, a lot of like things that I'm relying on myself to kind of look into and solve and figure out and like relabel. And anyway, I'm slowly turning into, it's making more and more sense as I'm like going at it. So I haven't hit any like walls or anything. But yeah, that risk, it's like it's hard to trust yourself enough to know that you can do things at like a level that, you know, you can bring value to like an extent to live off of, you know. So it's, yeah, and then it's, as things are going, I've learned that like you really can't expect anything, because like things change so often, and like you just have to know how to like fold in like to the next step as comfortably as possible with as things are changing. So yeah, a lot of like problems coming with like, but then the solutions are coming back, so like you're kind of fighting each other. But yeah, it's a lot of new things, but that's cool, because that's when you learn and figure things out. So I'm excited like a year down the line how this will go, because I'm sure like I'll have so much more like structured, I have like a million things. But anyway, it's cool to like be comfortable with like, yeah, I don't know, it's weird.
Yeah,
you have to
man.
trust yourself to the point where you can trust yourself. And that's, I don't know, there's a lot of things where it's not easy to know yourself enough to like get to that point. I don't know, it gets interesting. But yeah, I don't know.
No, you good. I would definitely agree with you. The feeling of gaining confidence is a really cool feeling. Because I think, I don't know for you, but as I feel like for most people, confidence is something we struggle with. And so, you know, at any point in your life when you kind of feel like you're getting a hold on things, or at least being more, I guess confidence is the only word I could think of right now, but in your abilities and in your passions, and that you feel like it's right, you know. I think, you know, you were just giving me props for being able to do this podcast, and but it took me a while for me to really feel like, you know.
Sure,
so
it shows too though with the quality, and like you have like 30 or so episodes I've seen, so that's that's serious, you know. And like the branding, you know, you got all the call to actions going, and like the pages and like the frequency, like you're doing it right, you know. So definitely take a moment, you know, be proud of yourself. It's something a lot of people do nowadays, you know. Like starting a podcast is like today's version of starting a band, you know.
Yeah, that's true.
Doing it right, so good for you, man.
Thank you. And I will save it for off the screen, but since you mentioned you were in marketing, I'm probably gonna have to pick your brain about this stuff.
Absolutely, man.
So well, let's move on to the second question though, because this is about you. This is about you. The second question is, what would you like the audience to know about you?
I don't know. In terms, I don't know about me in terms of call to actions.
Like okay, go for it. Call to actions.
But something like serious, I guess.
You could do both.
That's a later thing. We'll come back with end of episode with that stuff.
For sure.
But yeah, know about me. I'm nobody special. I've learned that special means different things to different people. Everyone has different definitions of like what smart means, or like intelligence, and then it's not always so obvious, you know. So I'm nobody special, but you know, it's I don't know. I don't want people to know much things about me. I don't know if I think about it much. I've been very, I guess, isolated with how I've been even presenting myself. Social media stuff. As a kid, I'm not so present, so active. It all feels so forced. So I don't mind being not known about. But if there's, I don't know, I'd like that to benefit the person who's thinking about it in a way. So if there's a way to show perspective in any way, then that would be the way I'd like to lean into that. I don't have much of an answer. Damn.
It's all good. I do want to ask.
What would be your answer to this question? I'm curious.
What would I like the audience to know about me? Yeah, I mean, you took my answer. Nobody special. But honestly, I'd probably want them to know that I'm trying. You know, I'm trying, and like, I this is very like egotistical of me, and I don't want you to get the wrong idea. I don't want to get the audience to get the wrong idea. But like my whole life, I always try to be the good guy, the nice guy, and like I'll always like if I'm around people, I'm giving maximum effort to like make that person comfortable, or like, you know, just feel at ease. I don't know too many people who try that, like, you know, going around in life. It's not that they don't want to, but maybe there's values and factors in their life that made them to the person who they are. And I've just had that right combination to be the person I am right now. And I'm very stubborn about it. You know, I'm very like, no, it's really like, I try to really be about everybody in the moment. And I do have my selfish moments, of course. And I think there's a balance to that. But for sure, I want the audience to know I'm about them, you know, regardless. So yeah, that's how I'd answer it.
There you go. That's perfect. Yeah. Thanks for the answer, man. Yeah.
No problem. No, thank you for giving that answer, because it made me think, and I wasn't sure what to say. But Nobody's Special, that's all about other folks, is probably my go-to. What would you say is the biggest misconception about you? Like, where, you know, after first impressions, people think a certain way, and then afterwards you'd be like, oh no, actually, I'm not like that, you know?
Yeah. I'd say it's probably like, people think I have my shit together. Like, I don't know. That's like I guess first impressions like can like say a lot of things, and like, I don't know, when you show like a level of comfort, like just when I'm just less anxious, whether it's after you had a drink or so or whatever, and like storytelling, or I don't know, people think I know what I'm doing, just with life, like the work and stuff, you know. And I'm always like, you know, happy to talk and like shed perspective on like any questions and stuff like that. But I'm like figuring things out as I'm going, as was everybody, you know. Like, this whole world, like nobody knows what they're doing really, but everyone cares, you know. So it's, all you can do is your best, and then like make the most out of what you know and where you are. But like, yeah, it's an ongoing question, life. That's never, I don't think an answer exists really. It just continues getting maybe more narrowed down or so. But I don't expect an answer, you know. I just want it to make more and more sense, which I think it's just a life experience, you know. As you go on, you get to know what you like, what you don't. You fold in what you do, like what you enjoy, and like you get rid of what you enjoy less. And, you know, decades down the line, ideally it's, you know, the top % of things that you like to do all the time, you know. Or,
hopefully, yeah.
Just, you know, natural progression of just trying to slowly do better, you know, an inch at a time. Doesn't have to be like huge steps or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was the question again?
No, you answered it perfectly. Don't worry. I want to ask you, who do you think has it figured out, and what's that difference from you to them?
Who has it figured out? Well, I don't believe anyone has like an answer to like. I'd say like formulas exist. Like if you can template your life, if you want to like, I've even like scheduled like, even like, let's say time management, like making a shift to like freelance. I have to be very like itemized with how I spend my time, and then like knowing how to log and like keep things like scheduled and like structured. So like you can like schedule like, all right, wake up this time, eat this time, work this time, work out this time, and then you can attach a formula to like, ooh, this, and then times 5 years later, I should be better in these few things that I threw into my day. But that's not, people aren't so robotic like that, you know. It's not like, that's why people like, I don't want to say fail, but they try a lot of things, you know. And then continuing to try, you know, turns into like closer to an answer. So like, down the line, it's just a matter of making more and more sense. The people who have it together, I don't know. Like, all right, let's think of like the world that we know, celebrity-wise.
Okay, yes, it has to be celebrities. Yeah.
So like, just, I don't know, it's something relatable, I guess. So like, who has some? If money's not a question, then already that's like a level of security that like a lot of people try to acquire. So like, we look at like millionaires, billionaires, you know, like artists of different types and sorts, but like. That's, you see a lot of problems with all these people as well, you know. So like, to have things together would mean, you know, ideally you wouldn't be so combative with life, with these like world scale problems, to the point where like people like us are like seeing it. So I don't know, the more money, more problems, you know.
Yeah.
So, like, that scale, you're trying to do more with that money, you're probably gonna get more problems. So like, I don't know. Until you retire and you're done, what happened to the MySpace guy?
Oh,
from
Tom.
MySpace?
Tom,
He just like sold and cut, right? Like he made his dollars, whatever. Someone acquired him.
you know what
and
he does
then
now? I looked it up.
What's he up to now? No. Oh, I'm curious.
He's a photographer, and he just
Oh my god, that works.
he
He's
tried.
to that photo of his and like on that chalkboard or something.
Yeah.
Oh my god. I
He-
need
he-
to hire him for something.
He travels the world just taking beautiful pictures because he has the time and resources to do it.
Yo,
And-
good for him. Oh
Yeah,
my
no,
God.
good for Tom. Yeah, good for Tom.
Exactly. He's not like, he doesn't have to like create any more problems in the world, any more publicity, whatever. He's just living his life, doing what he loves, taking photos, traveling. The best, He's got things figured out, probably, I'd say.
For sure. Are you a hip hop fan at all, or nah? Not really.
I listen to a good bit of it.
Okay.
It's unfortunately more of the mainstream stuff,
Huh? Yeah.
But I do enjoy. I'd say like what I listen to nowadays, it's like lo-fi and mixes of like hip hop, like rap music that's coming out nowadays.
For sure.
Like I have to shout out this YouTube channel called Chill AF. I
Okay.
know it sounds a little douchey, but their quality top tier. It's like this one person just mixing like whatever new music, The Weeknd, Kid Cudi, or like
That's
Kanye,
sick.
or,
All
like,
right.
different like Gambino or a million things. But I don't know. For some reason, that channel encompasses all the artists I listen to, and then threw it into like lo-fi remixes.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'm an appreciator of that culture of music, I would say.
I would say like I think the top rappers right now, at least in my opinion,
Mhm.
and yeah, if you look at the charts, it's not going to be the ones that I'm going to mention right now. But someone I really think who has it figured out. I'm a big fan of his, J. Cole. Just because from the mixtape days, he's one of the artists I grew up with, right? Like from college to where I'm at now.
Yes.
Felt like there was like a similar struggle, so I really got attached to his music. But I don't know if you know too much of what his path has been. They tried to make him the mainstream artist. He kind of rejected it after touching his toes into the industry.
Yeah.
He used his money to open his own label and like signed on people he believed in. And then now, he just does different side projects, but still stays attached to music somehow. So all that, I'm like, damn, I think he figured out what kind of career I would love. And I would say that he's made it, but yeah, that's my example.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with all of that. And that too, there's been some pushback in how he's treated the industry and stuff. And it's been cool, like seeing how he's treated all that, taking it under his own control with his own label, like funding it himself and everything, like you're saying.
Mm.
And then, yeah, he's getting bigger and bigger every day. It's awesome to see. And that's one of probably the better influential people to attach to while you're growing up. So that's awesome, I didn't unfortunately grow up with him.
I got you.
Yeah.
I'm showing my age.
It's all good. I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm getting there as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks for your answer there.
Yeah, no worries. My third question for you in the warm-up is, if I were to do something in your honor, a way to express the energy you possess, what could I do?
So to express the energy that I possess, I wouldn't know how to define the energy that I possess. Maybe try to, I'd say a combination of some kind of giving, some kind of kindness, some kind of, make a donation to a charity of your choice. There you go. Make whatever amount you're comfortable with. That's it. If my energy turns into a tangible monetary difference towards the choice that you believe in, then I would say that's a plus. If that makes sense.
I got you. That's great. Super specific and something we know concretely what we could do in your honor, and now we know.
Yeah, I'm like, I could get all like insightful and like like Inception with it again, but like I'll just, let's have some grounded, tangible, answers. We'll mix it up here and there.
Yeah, and it like this portion is really just for us to know. It doesn't.
A warm up.
Yeah. And then my last question for you in the warm up is, on a scale from 1 to 10, how well do you know about yourself? How well do you know yourself?
I'd say I don't think I'm ever gonna move from a 5. Because like when you're learning things, well, like as things are not moving up or down, but as things are moving in general, like you learn and forget different versions of yourself, and then like life happens that means different things, you know. So like I don't know what it could mean to know yourself completely. Like I mean, to an extent, when it comes to like tangible, or I mean, like knowing what you like, what you don't like, you can attach to, like, you'll learn more and more of that like as you live. I don't know, I'd say, but like, yeah, to be even like a 6 or like a 4 would be like, there'd be something that caused that deviation, which like, I don't know. I don't know what I'd say a 5.
For sure, man.
Good question. I don't see ever, even like, let's say I'm like 1 year old. I'd say I'm a 5, even at that point, based on the context of my life, the context of my experience. And then, 5 seems like my lifetime score.
Yeah, man.
Not loud, but yeah.
That's that great answer, you know, because I get it. I get what you mean. And I don't think there's like, you know, I accept that answer fully. Like I know for you that sounds so true, and when I think about it for myself, because normally on the podcast, when people ask me back, I always say 5 as well. For me to think that I'm a 5 all the time, I'm like, shit, maybe I am. So you gave me something to think about.
It's interesting. Yeah, I have to think more about it too now. But yeah, it's cool. I'm glad I sparked that insight.
For sure. And all right, man, we're gonna start moving on to the icebreakers. But before we do that, I want to let the folks out there know, if you are loving this content, please like, subscribe, and share. It does wonders for this podcast, even though I am not great at it. And it's funny, when earlier you mentioned that, you know, I've been doing the right things, and in my mind I'm like, nah, man. Whatever I'm doing, that's cool if you think that, and that's great feedback. And for me, like on the other end, I'm just like, I'm dropping the ball all the time when it comes to doing these transitions. But no worries, we'll talk more later.
I feel you. We're always the most self-critical when it comes to like our own projects, because we hold ourselves to like an unrealistic standard. Like we have a finished product in our head, and that we're always reaching for, and like we never feel like we're there, you know.
Yeah.
So, I feel what you mean though, but I like where you are with everything that you've been doing. I would say you're taking the right steps, and we will get more into it after. Yeah. Right on. Yeah, it's good stuff, man.
For sure. So icebreakers. First one for you is a true or false. I'm going to give you a statement, and you just let me know if you agree or disagree. All right.
Cool.
This first statement is, people are ultimately good.
True.
Why?
Would I explain? Okay, good.
Yeah.
I'd say the so broad, but I'd say the general ratio of people who are good or ultimately good, or like to define ultimately good, I'd say like your intent is not to well, your intent is ultimately good. Like you don't mean to cause harm or do harm or like suppress anyone around you. You know, you want the best for everyone and yourself, and it's productive, positive efforts towards just everything. But yeah, I'd say there is a percent out there that like, whether it's a result of chemical differences, as you know, your genetics, or like not genetics, but like you're born, or like people are there's different like mental things that cause people to think a way that's not always the most rational, and it's unfortunate, but it's a numbers game. You know, there's so many people out there, and there's always going to be that 1% or so. So ultimately, I would say people are good. Actually, so I went to Europe when I finished school, do a little bit of backpacking, and let's see, the rest of the world.
That's sick.
So I went to like 5 different places in Europe. So Austria, and then Italy, in Milan, and then Switzerland, Paris, and Amsterdam. All these different places have vastly different like culture, like with like the people, the foot traffic on the streets, like the architecture outside, like the cities versus suburbs, and like the nature, the food, and like the language. So it's cool, you know, just seeing how how cohesive these different cultures kind of function together, and they're all like within hours of each other. It's the beauty of Europe, I guess.
Yeah.
But it's so I met a lot of different people, and I learned a little bit of different languages. I stayed in like hostels, so like they're like rooms with like bunk beds, and there's like 4 or 8 other people in these places, like within the same room or so, which is why they're very cheap. Well, depends on what hostels and stuff. Anyway, so you're in the room with people who are in the same position as you, so you talk a little bit, and by default you're friends. And then you go to the city, you know, you want to figure things out, you want to try new foods, you want to like see the clubs or like do whatever, just hang out. And you meet people, you know, and you see people, and you interact, and you see how I'd say I saw a lot more generosity and like kindness and like just like compassion and like care versus like the other end of things. I saw very little of the other, like that 1% or so that are like irrational or any negative stuff. But yeah, so ultimately I would say people are good from my experience.
Oh, for sure. I mean, you know, this is always kind of like the more I've asked people this question, the more my answer to it shifts and changes. And I used to be the person who always said, yeah, people are ultimately good. And you could tell me what you think of it. I think my perspective now has been people are ultimately good and ultimately bad. Like there's both sides in us. And you know, you're talking about us being self-critical to ourselves. I think like when we're around other people, we are more good, and then when we are to ourselves, that's when we're more bad. And I think that portion came from me though, like to think of that difference, right? But yeah.
Nice. It's a definite, you know, that 1%, it's not only in the population of the world, like it exists in all of us too, you know. There's that fraction of us that, you know, is that ultimate bad, you know. So thanks for being open to, you know, change your perspective on stuff as like you learn more about it, you know. So that's cool.
That's another thing I want people to know about me, is that I don't know anything. So I'm just, you know, trying to take in as much as I can, because I don't have the answers.
That's the world. Welcome. Students of life. That's it.
Exactly. Second statement for you is overthinking is bad.
Yes. Well, I'm gonna explain it. So I'll say
yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, go for it.
I overthink a lot. I overthink a lot, and that I'd say has resulted into some of my strengths today. So I've learned to leverage that factor, that chemical imbalance that makes me think that way. I'm not gonna get into medical things, but it's clinical reasons why there's an imbalance. But I learned I haven't really thought about these prior to now. I'm in like my mid-late 20s. So I've just kind of learned to live with how I am, and then over time learning to work with what I have, and then turn into making that my point of like leverage with what I'm doing. So to that point, I'd say it's not bad to overthink, but overthink means thinking more than you need to, just by the nature of the word. So it depends on what context of that. So I'm talking about it's not bad in terms of like productivity or like getting uncomfortable, or like, because that's when growth happens too. Like when you're forced to like problem solve via like if you like irrationalize like a situation that's not realistic, like via overthinking or so, then like you're coming up with like environments that aren't real. But like the more you like, you know, have these visions, or I mean not visions, but the more you position yourself in that place, like the more you'll find like intuitive answers to the real life iterations of those problems. But you'll find often if you overthink, you step back from like a third person perspective and see it's not like a realistic, well, most often it's not going to be like an immediate urgency kind of worry, which is how it feels, because like anxiety makes your body react in a way that's like feels like urgent. But yeah, anxiety is your body being uncomfortable. Like that's the reaction to your body telling you it's uncomfortable. But that's also where, you know, growth happens. You gotta be uncomfortable sometimes, but not all the time. So that's where it can be bad. If you're in constant like overthinking state, or if you don't know how to like pull yourself out of this like mental loop, then it can deteriorate like your quality of life. Or if you learn how to hone it and like kind of use it, then you can, or learn how to approach it. If it is like a medical thing you've identified, then I'd say then there's productive ways to it. But I'm thinking of like the day-to-day sense, like overthinking cases. Like often when you just wake up, you start thinking of like the most serious things for no reason. So in that case, like it's not ideal. You wake up with the most stressful things that are gonna be, well, your morning slowly defines how your day is gonna go. If you have a bad morning, it's gonna you have to drag yourself through the rest of the day, you know. So in terms of like day-to-day quality of life, overthinking, I'd say is not ideal. I'd say there's benefits in terms of like productivity and like being aware of how you're overthinking, towards like as a result of like anxiety, or if there's like you have an interview tomorrow or something, you're thinking of all the scenarios or the questions or like the possibilities, then you can get yourself in a mental trap, you know. But then you might have, as a result of that, the next day you have a lot of answers to some of these potential questions that you can maybe even leverage in your conversation now. So you've like accidentally studied. So there's, I don't know, there's ways to see it, you know. But yeah, to answer the question, ideally overthinking would not be so major in your day-to-day life.
Gotcha.
I would say that. Yeah.
I mean, I
water.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. I can tell that you know, you like to think things through, man, because it sounds like everything you given me, and this is something that is a value of mine, is everything's in balance, right? Like, you know, if it's being people ultimately good versus, you know, also ultimately bad, and your overthinking can be a positive and a negative. Yeah, I mean, that's true. Like all these perspectives are true, and that's why it makes it so hard for us to kind of figure out if we are trying to say there's a right way, right? It's very difficult to pinpoint.
Yeah, you know, doing that. So basically, that we're just trying to narrow down that balance, like that ratio to this, to that, like with this, and like how to like just be aware of where you are, like in your life, and like the context of like what you have to work with, and like making the most out of that. Like, let's say acknowledging that like you're in this 5-year stretch of your life would like to be career oriented or so you can like hone down like a certain niche that you can like specialize and like excel in for the next 5 years, and then you'll have a certain thing established that we can hang on to now. And then maybe you can, let's say the following 5 years, you want to consider like getting into a relationship or something. So then you can like, well, I don't know, it depends on like your approach to life. But there's different ways to like, with your time, like finding time for hobbies, routine, 30 minutes at the end of the day where you can like make the most out of like recording these, you know, or like working on a project, or developing an app or like a website or like anything really. Just balance. Slowly finding that. And it means different things to different people. So there is no answer. Just closer and closer to, I guess, that answer. But that's the fun part too, like the journey, you know?
No doubt.
Through everything.
I hear you, man. I hear you. We're definitely on the same page about that.
Cool.
We're gonna skip the second icebreaker and move straight into the wheel. Just because, just to let you know, we made it to the halfway point, and
Hey, cool.
just
I'm rambling, by the way. I don't mean to. I might sometimes, but
don't worry about rambling, man. Like, this is, like I said, it's about you. I want you to feel like you can say anything you need to. So yeah, keep going.
Cool.
Turning to the wheel though. You get a chance to check out any of the other questions, or you kept it blind this part?
Oh, I did want to leave an element of surprise. So I did not look past that. There was a spoiler alert label.
Yes,
and I'm like,
yes.
I'm gonna leave it. I'll leave it like that. So I came here and I'm like, let's do it.
Excellent. I'm gonna give it a spin. And just a heads up, if anything is too deep or something you don't want to talk about, feel free to pass. No pressure.
Yeah, cool.
And your first number is gonna be, it is right there at the line, but it looks like it's gonna be more 7 than 8. So we're gonna go with 7. And this one's hard. But number 7, what is the toughest thing to admit about yourself?
The hardest thing to admit about yourself would be whatever you're lying to yourself about. So that may change based on whatever it needs that much of a lie, but like not. Can you say the question again? One more time.
No problem. What is the toughest thing to admit about yourself?
I like this question. Well, the toughest thing sometimes to admit is that you don't have an answer. Like there is no, have the awareness to know that with what you know in terms of whether it's experience or like perspective, that you just sometimes you can't know the answer to certain things, and that's okay. No one can know everything. That's where like friends or like community or like on social or like the web, Google or whatever exists. Like learning what that next step is. But like if you don't, sometimes you just don't have the tools to know. But it doesn't mean you shouldn't try, because that's always the natural progression of that is then acquiring whatever tools you need to continue with that. But don't be afraid to admit that you don't have the answers, and sometimes you can't. That's okay. So just be okay with, like, don't be too hard on yourself for these things as well. Because like that's the self-critical element too. It's like when we set expectations for ourselves, it's because we're the hardest on ourselves. Like because we know with like if we go for like the short-term like dopamine kick with like if you're eating a sugary thing, or if you're like if you have like a vice with like alcohol or like cannabis or whatever, or if you're chasing the short-term versus long-term, and then in the back of your mind that it's not like the right thing, that's when you're lying to yourself, so I'd say don't be afraid to admit when you don't know, and don't be too hard on yourself, even though it's not so easy. But I want to phrase those things as the answer to the question.
Okay.
So what's the hardest thing to admit about yourself? Admit that you don't always have the answers, and you're not perfect. So
gotcha, man.
And you're not expected to be by anybody, and you shouldn't expect that out of yourself, because nobody is. But yeah, if that makes sense.
No, for sure. I got you.
All right. I don't know. Sometimes I'm like, is my mouth is going, and my brain is like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Think about what I'm saying.
No, I mean, I think you have to be able to get out all the words to finish the thought. Which for some people it feels like they're saying too much, when I think not enough has been said for you to finish the thought. So let's give it a spin.
Let's do it.
Let's hope for a little lighter one, but we'll see.
No, heavier.
Heavier. Go heavier. Number 15. Number 15 is, what's the worst thing you ever told yourself? Like, we were talking about being hard on ourselves. So for you, what's like something that, maybe that negative side continues to tell you?
Yeah. The worst thing I've ever told myself. I'd say it's I'm just less than those around me. Yeah, I think like growing up or like that. Well, everyone has that period, like in like elementary school, or like high school, when you're like, like learning about like you and whatever in school, how you're doing with grades and like the athletics and just everything. So I remember I was put in like a segment of like the class with like the other 30% of students that like had to like do more, like didn't do as well on like a test. And then I'm like, all right. But it didn't really, looking back, it didn't really evaluate anything like real. I remember the tests too. It was very like, I still don't understand how like, anyway, I'll look more into it later, I guess. But it wasn't like a real representation of like perception of how you should see yourself at that age or so. But I'd say the way they communicated those differences may have been like the disconnect. So like they attached like a certain, there wasn't like a certain perception, but like I think I attached that to myself. Like, yeah, when it comes like academically, I'm like, so I'm like, I had like available resources if I needed it, but I never used it because I'm like, then I'm like, no, I don't need that. No one else needs that. Why would I need that? So I'm like, but then you shouldn't like discount like anything out, like any tools or resources or whatever, or even like how people like define that label, like if it is in school, like elementary and stuff. So I don't know, growing up, I told myself, I'm like, not where I should be. I'm like, I'm always like a year, two, I thought I'm like 2-3 years behind like my peers in terms of like just development, the growth, just like at being good at life. Like I'd say like based on where I think I should be, I'm less than that. And then I just attached that to my brain as I went through school. And it's not that anyone like pushed that perspective or like narrative to me. I was just, I don't know, I was given like the opportunity to like make the most out of like whatever additional resources, and I saw that as like a crutch. So I just told myself that, like it wasn't like looked down upon or anything. But yeah, I just gave myself like a self-perception of like being less than like people, like my general like environment, school or peers or friends or whatever. And then you grow up and then you learn that's like, no one knows anything actually. And it's like, oh shit, so everyone does have their own brains and lives and like their own strengths and weaknesses, and it's like everyone's trying to figure their own version of life out, so there's no way to be except like you. So like it's like we all have that ideal version of ourselves in our brain, so it's hard not to like compare today's version of you versus that ideal version of you that doesn't exist. But it's still nice to have like a reference for where you'd like to be, so it's nice to have that figure, but it's wrong when you compare that to where you are, because it's so intangible that it's start to just look down on yourself today. So it's probably just I gave myself a false narrative that like just suppressed my general like the quality of life, or I don't know, I just when you feel like less than, I guess, you just kind of step back sometimes, you're a little more just be yourself. And then until there's like areas where you can improve otherwise, you know. Slowly, as you grow, as you go through life, you learn your strengths, and then that's when you learn your comfort zones, and you gain some confidence through that, and then that turns into who you are today. That continues. You know, you're gonna continue learning more like strengths, like weaknesses, like different versions of you. With maybe you're great at martial arts. You know, you never tried Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. You know, who knows? You'll be intuitive with the wrestling element or something. So there's a lot of these hidden things about us that we don't know, but that's just life. You know, we can't be expected to know everything about us. But that's when the journey comes in. You know, you got to try different things. You know, as you go on through life, see what happens. You know, take that month trial at the place next door. They have this all around me for some reason.
For sure. Sure.
I'll keep the answer.
No worries. I was thinking what came up for me as you were giving your answer was, I don't know if it's by design, but they seem to have made the most sensitive time in our lives when we're so sensitive about being compared, and, you know, being judged, and it happens in school, and, you know, from elementary to high school, and you know, we get so wrapped up in competing against each other and trying to be on top. Sometimes, not for everybody, but I know for me that was kind of the perspective that was put on me. You know, you want to get the scholarships, you want to get the top grades and all this stuff. So yeah, and then I wonder if that's some like evil genius stuff, if whoever made the school system into no, you know what, we're gonna play on their emotions and personalities, and you know, trying to be validated early, so then will have them forever as they get older. But yeah, man.
It's not. I'd say the school system is not effective. In terms of, there's a lot of things to pick, I guess, but in terms of being effective versus ineffective, I would say it's not effective. Moments, you know, it's teaching kids how to teach themselves through whatever tools schools are giving them. So it's that learning curve that is what people are learning through themselves. I guess for my case, I can't speak for everybody.
I hear you.
But I learned how to learn through school. I didn't learn the things they taught me specifically. I learned what I wanted to learn just out of interest, But yeah, the current format of school, establishing the right fundamentals of life to then be continued after, is not really being considered just yet. It's still pretty traditional. How do they treat that whole system? If you compare it to 100 years ago, it's pretty much the same. So it's another industry it's got to shift a little bit. Maybe this whole world thing helped with this remote stuff, or I don't know. Again, the whole world is trying to learn as it's happening, so it's weird. But anyway, I don't want to go on that. But
oh, you're fine. Yeah. No, we could definitely get into the school system, maybe in a part 2 if you're open to coming back sometime.
Absolutely.
So we gotta head on to the closeout questions. But before we go there, there's this little exercise I'd like to do with my guests. It's called the 34th mantra, and this is probably the most uncomfortable part of the podcast for a lot of folks, because I'm going to switch you over to another screen where it's basically a reflection, and you're going to be telling yourself, I am, I can, I will, filling out each of those with a statement. So I am, I can, I will, and I will. You'll see it at the bottom of the screen as well if you forget. But here we go.
Cool.
All right. You begin whenever you like. Okay.
Think about this.
Take your time. You want me to? I'll switch back main stage, and you let me know when you're ready.
Now let's do it. Let's stick to that screen. I'm good to it.
All right.
As it does, organically.
I got you.
I am present. I can continue. I can move forward. I will move forward. Let me see if I have a version 2 now.
Go for it.
I am curious. I can solve. I can think differently. I will not have an answer.
No worries.
Like, I don't know. That's if that
Satisfied?
suffices.
Yeah.
There you go.
I like it, man. I like it.
There's like layers and layers, and like probably doesn't make too much sense on the surface, which is all you guys are getting. So I'm sorry.
As long as it makes sense to you, that part is for you, man. Like, you know, you're gonna rewatch this at some point in your life, and they'll either be reminders, you know, or something that's gonna keep you pushing forward. But yeah, man.
Yeah.
I think you did just fine.
It's been cool to think that way. Thank you for posing that question.
No problem. No problem. All right. Moving on to the closeout questions. This first one is from my previous guest. Shout out to Crazy Man Sage. You'll see that coming up too. He's a crazy man.
I'm excited. Sage, you say?
Yeah, Crazy Man Sage. His question for you is, if you could make anything with the money and all the resources, what would you make? What would you create?
So all the money, all the resources in the world.
Yeah, like you had it, you got it, and it's an idea in your head. What would you make?
What I would make is a difference. But what kind of a difference is the question.
Okay.
So what kind of a difference would I make? In the world, I'd like to bring people a lot closer in terms of like quality of life to each other. Like mutual quality of life throughout different, like everywhere in the world, you know, whether it's like access to food or like shelter or like water or like if it's jobs or if it's like a lot of different things, you know. If everyone had a certain level of the same things, I can see, you know, a little bit, I can see that being a little closer to unity, you know, if there's some shared perspective with availability to like all the physiological needs of life. So, but how would that be provided, you say? I'd start an organization. No, I'd work with governments to allocate the right people to think the right way towards solving these physiological things towards different, you know, places in the world. Everyone's got different problems to be solved, and filling those gaps, you know, is step one. Making sure, you know, the fundamentals of, you know, life are established for the most part for everybody. And this is given, again, money, resources are there, so I'm just, you know, making it easy, I guess. And then making sure the maintenance of all this is like effective. Because like anyone can throw like $1 trillion at a country and say, all right, I'll figure it out. Cool. You guys can buy all this stuff, right? But I want to make sure like whatever governing entities or however it'll be treated has the right intentions for whatever they're overseeing, like across the world. Making sure, you know, the right minds are, you know, and both like morally and like logically towards the right approach with like everything, with the context of like what they're looking at, like what they're overseeing. Yeah, just making a lot more sense out of, you know, the leaders, the right, you know, financial delegation, the right perspective across the world. Yeah, that'd be closer, because I guess the goal is unity. Is that world peace? I don't know. What does that mean? It's
yeah,
like,
that's
kind of like we're on the same place. Like we all have a level of like understanding, relatability.
Exactly. Understanding. Yeah.
There's no more like combativeness, like conflict that can be like rationalized or like resolved or communicated through, you know. So one day that'd be nice.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, so if we could just ensure that everyone in the world had the basics and had, you know, some kind of fulfillment, then that might create it. That might be the understanding that we're looking for.
It's one step, you know, towards that, whatever the answer is.
I got you. I mean,
That's what comes to mind.
I feel like you had thought about that before because you were pretty detailed.
I
But
like keep thinking about it. I like thinking that way. I
Yeah.
haven't though, but I'm like, the more I think about it, the more I can try to make sense out of it, and that's kind of
Yeah.
where I landed so far. And I'm like, let me see if I can find the right people to talk to now. I'm gonna
yeah,
check some LinkedIn messages and see how far I get. But
for sure.
but yeah, that's cool to think that way, you know. And
Yeah,
thanks for again giving that place for me to even think that way.
it's all good. It's your chance now, though. What would you like to ask the next guest on 34 Questions?
Okay, something that's a little bit more. Something that would require creativity.
Hmm.
I don't want to think too much about it. I'm probably going to end up doing that. All right. What would if your family existed 50 years from now? What would you wish? What would you tell them that you wished you've told yourself when you were in their position? Oh, that doesn't make sense. Hold on. Okay. What would you tell yourself? What would you tell your kids that you wish you would have told yourself when you were 10 years? How old are you when you just go into high school?
14 over here, 13, 14 in
Okay.
California.
Okay. So what would you tell that version of yourself towards the answer to life?
Oh, okay. What would you tell your 13 yourself? The answer to life?
Yeah. So like with the context of the world from a 13-year-old's perspective
Mhm.
versus your current perspective, however old your guest is, what would be, how would he communicate the answer to life in a way that would make sense to a 13-year-old?
Got you.
That makes sense.
That would be interesting, man, because that's one of the challenges I face. I do work at a high school after school
Nice.
program, and there are times where I feel like maybe my language and the concepts that I talk to the kids about like just goes over their head. Like, they'll tell me an issue about not being able to be on the team anymore because their grades are low. And I go into this whole thing about like, you got to understand your parents because they're still discovering how good parenting works. If they're banning you from something you love, maybe it might be right for you, but maybe that's something they got to realize in their journey and all this stuff. So
Exactly. Yeah.
they are kind enough to not be like, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. So I would hope some part of that is connecting with them, and they're like, I don't know if that's too early. I don't know if that's too early for a kid to think about.
Say so.
But
yeah, that kind of perspective, especially from where you're standing, with your experience doing that same thing, I'd say it's introducing that line of thought can only mean like good things, from where they're standing. So yeah,
I hope so.
that.
I hope so, man. And then my last question for you, Joe, the question that ties everything together, 100, 200, 300 years from now, your descendants are watching this video. What would you like to tell them?
All right, let's say 300 years.
300 years, yeah.
300 years from now, however the way where the world exists. My descendants. Is there? Wait. So that means there's gonna be a lot, right? Because then,
I mean, I would hope that all your descendants saw this, but maybe it's just that one that uncovers it,
You're right. Yeah, I was thinking of just multiplication. But who knows?
Talking to thousands.
Just villages of my last names everywhere. I don't want. Okay. What would I? Okay, I would tell them. I hope you're having fun, life, with what you're doing. Hope things are making sense in terms of. I don't want to just hope the best for them, because of course I do, but what can I tell them that would be of value? I have a key stashed in this location. Inside there is a crypto wallet.
Yeah, exactly.
The coordinates to this are below. And
Yeah,
the message will self-destruct in exactly 30 seconds. Something that'll be like, all right, you know what? If 300 years down the line, if there's something I was, have a little keepsake somewhere, something tangible, make them, now they can live happily if they weren't before.
Exactly.
So
you just blessed them.
Yeah. There you go. That's, the hidden USB somewhere, an old. Anyway, but yeah, I'll throw that in there. It sounds like a fun answer.
For sure.
Yeah.
Any last things you'd like to add before we head out of here, Joe? Like, you could also do your call to action as well.
So that's, I don't have much to call, I don't have much actions to call right now, but I'd like to personally get better at communicating, just talking. I'm thinking a podcast would be a step towards that. So I bought the domain name to a podcast. I also have the YouTube channel. No videos yet. WeHereTalking.com.
WeHereTalking.com. Cool.
There you go. Or YouTube.com/WeHereTalking. Yeah, we'll see. I don't know. I'll talk about business, marketing, people, life, like around marketing, around business, just navigation of, everything, So I don't know what it'll turn into yet, but I'm sure it'll be a fun time. Yeah, that's really all.
That's dope, man. Yeah. We'll be watching your growth for sure, and I think that's the most important thing you got to do is get the domain.
Yeah, exactly.
Or else you got to change your whole name.
Exactly. Done. You don't want to find out too late. Like, you don't have the right social usernames now, and now you found it legally. You're set.
Yeah, man. I got pretty lucky with 34 questions. It took me a long time to figure out the right name, and
That's a crazy one you got too.
Me.
Like, congrats on landing that.
Appreciate it. Yeah, right.
There you go. Hang on to that. You're gonna get an offer like 20 years from now from some like AAA company. Like, don't retire off that name like already.
That'd be great. But yeah, man, just want to thank you again for stopping by. I thought this was a great conversation. I hope you had fun as well.
Been awesome, man. This opportunity, your time, your attention, your interest in today's talk, I do appreciate that. And I'm absolutely open to having you on my podcast when that happens.
That'd be great.
As well as I'm open to coming back as well if that's something you'd like to get into. But it's been fun, man. Thinking this way, talking this way, and it's interesting. I want to meditate now, where I keep thinking ask these questions to myself.
Hey, feel free to check out the other questions, because now that you've done it won't be really spoilers. But yeah, take it to your friends, your family, if they're open to have these conversations. I think it's always great if we can do it with the ones that are closest to us. But yeah, so feel free. But yeah, we'll definitely talk about you coming on in the future. That would definitely be great.
Cool. Yeah, appreciate that. Happy to do it. Anytime.
For sure. I want to say thank you to all the folks out there as well. If you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or watching on YouTube, thank you for your time. It means a lot, and I hope you got to know Joe a little bit better. Remember to reach out, reach forward. As always, much love. We'll catch you guys next time on 34 Questions. Peace. And it fades from there, man.
Beautiful. All right.
Yeah.
Good stuff, man.